Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. Happy Monday to everybody listening. Hopefully you all had a fantastic weekend. I know I did. Far too social for how much work I have to do, but that's not always a bad thing. Hello, as all the people begin trickling into the show. I appreciate that very much. Um, you know, when I do this show, I normally come in with three different ideas of what I want to talk about over the course of the 2 hour duration of the program. And today's going to be a little bit different because I feel like only one story is kind of captivating at least the people of Wisconsin, and something tells me this is going to become a much more national story as things begin to escalate here. Um, we got a couple of guests. If you didn't see, I kind of booked it early this morning. We're going to be bringing two different state senators from Wisconsin, Chris Alfheim and Chris Larson. At different times. Chris Alfheim is going to be on the program at 9:20. Chris Larson is going to be on the show at 10:30. I didn't really talk to them about what they want, what their thoughts on the matter are, but just based on what I know about them as senators and what I know about their politics, something tells me they're going to offer two pretty distinct, different realities surrounding what took place late Friday after Outside the Box wrapped up. And I see plenty of you guys trickling in across all the platforms. Thank you so much for being here. But before we do any of that, I think it's important that we get to the real news of the day, and that's the history of the airplane. Orville and Wilbur Wright achieved the first successfully powered, controlled, and sustained heavier-than-air flight on December 17th, 1903, in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The historic flight lasted for 12 seconds. I'm joking, of course. Happy EAA to everybody that has to be there today. We're going to jump into the news of the day, of course. All of that is going to be happening throughout the show. Of course, I would like to start the show. Anybody not listening to this in Wisconsin has no idea what that joke is, and everybody in Wisconsin is laughing at that. I just want everybody to know that. Um, I want to start with my own take on the matter before we get some senators in here, and we're obviously going to react throughout the day as well. And anybody who wants to chime in, obviously, I already see Phil saying, yes, the BS Democrats are playing games. I'm gonna throw a StreamYard link in the tube of you chat right now. I'm going to pull Facebook up on my thing now so that I don't forget and think about it later. Um, Ferg says, screw EAA, they need to leave permanently. Methinks I'm finding somebody that lives in the region and doesn't like the traffic. Um, but okay, great. I'm going to have this up as well in case anybody wants to leave comments on Facebook too. But so, um, needless to say, if you know me at all, I saw what took place on Friday and kind of recoiled a little bit. And allow me to explain why. Um, I wear it on my sleeve. I've worn it on my sleeve that I'm a progressive minded individual. And more importantly, that I believe that progressive politics are the most popular brand of politics that are out there. I believe that centrism, liberalism, blue MAGA, as I call it, is what ultimately led to Donald Trump and failed to keep Donald Trump out of the White House after it was thrust upon us again in 2020. And I think there are becoming countless examples we are finding countless examples of progressive politicians invigorating a voting base, generating excitement within a state that it might not otherwise exist. Now, not everybody has to share that opinion, and I can tell you right now that at least one of the two state senators is going to disagree with me. And as I oftentimes state on this show, that is okay. But I have to believe, and I will be bringing these questions up. I don't know how many of you watched David Crowley get interviewed over the weekend, but He was asked the question, why does it seem like so many Democratic voters are enraged by him re-entering the race and receiving the governor's endorsement? To which he blamed, you'll never guess, Donald Trump. And that to me feels like exactly what's wrong with liberal politics. As Jarmani says, she saw it, and what a wrong answer. Then he was referred to as the establishment candidate. And his response to that was, a black person can't be the establishment candidate. Now, I do get the logic. I understand that historically, uh, um, the black population has been held down, and the idea that they could represent the man is a bit more difficult to process. But in 2026, it absolutely is possible. Like I always say about Lloyd Austin, Joe Biden's defense secretary, the first black defense secretary ever, which is great, but he also was just as much of a warmonger as all the ones that came before him. So you are part of the establishment when you start to act a certain way. And if you ask anybody who is knowledgeable about the race, um, Francesca Hong or David Crowley, who is the more establishment candidate, or hell, of all of the remaining candidates, Joel Brennan notwithstanding, I would argue that David Crowley is more establishment than any of them. Now, don't get me wrong, I have his contact info, and I'm intending to get him on this show to talk to him personally about his re-entrance into the race, receiving the endorsement from Governor Evers. But I have to say, how many more times do liberals have to touch the stove before realizing that this isn't the right way to do things? Again, had he stayed in and been polling vastly ahead, totally. What we are watching right now happen is like a very small time version of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was polling at less than 1% in 2020, and she was forced upon us as the candidate in 2024, and it was vote for her. Otherwise, have you seen the other option? David Crowley's campaign never generated any kind of momentum at all the entire time. And the idea that after he dropped out of the race, that he would be pushed back into the race and then immediately receive the endorsement from the sitting governor, that's suspicious to me. That should be suspicious to anybody. And it begs the question, what is genuinely so scary about progressive politics? And I'm hopeful that I get some insight into those answers today, because I get the idea, for the record, and I'm going to say this when Chris Alpine comes on in 10 minutes, I am not a defund the police leftist. I think we need to reform it heavily. You won't find posts of me or videos of me chanting defund the police at something in my entire life. Doesn't mean I'm against the people that think that or don't think that realistically, when that was the catchphrase of Democrats, they beat Trump by 9 million votes. Then Kamala Harris shows up and says, I'm going to invest in police. I'm going to make the U.S. military, the strongest military on the planet. I'm going to hyper militarize the border. Did not really attract a lot of moderates. But when defund the police was being chanted on the streets of Minnesota and in Kenosha and in so many other places, even when the establishment didn't accept that as a catchphrase, Democrats beat the shit out of the Republicans. And so the idea that standing on the principles that policing can be improved is somehow a negative towards a campaign, well, you're going to have a pretty solid pitch to convince me that that makes sense. And moreover, that if David Crowley came away with the win in the primary, that his more moderate take on policing would somehow win over moderates. Because I'd be willing to bet Not a single person is going to slide over. I need establishment Democrats to explain to me why they view progressive politics as innately bad. I can tell you Gaza, friendly with corporations, not hard enough on billionaires in this country, friendly with some billionaires, milk toast solutions for sustainability. The list goes on and on. I can tell you what about liberal politics rubs me the wrong way, even when I can highlight that I do believe it is better than conservative politics. All we ever hear from centrists is we can't vote for leftist electability. Oh, yeah, you're right. People don't want affordable health care. They'd rather just go back to Obamacare that was working so well before Republicans let it expire, right? I need somebody in the centrist flank to tell me what they view as scary coming from this candidate. Why they think the person who is very obviously ginning up the most excitement doesn't stand the best chance going against Tiffany. And for the record, I still maintain every single candidate can beat Tiffany. To me, it's a question of how much shit you actually want to get done. How far do you want to take it? Do you want to hear better things aren't possible, or do you want to hear the sky's the limit? Violet says Obamacare was better than no option at all. That's liberalism in a nutshell, but you're exactly right. It is. Yeah, what did you say here, Alex, before about the governor? The same governor who wasn't going to endorse anybody, BTW. That's what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. It's because the writing's on the wall and all the measures by which they thought they would give her the rope and allow her to you know what herself. She's only gaining more momentum because, again, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Progressive politics are popular politics. This isn't rocket science here. And you watch the races around the country, and it's always a different measure. It's always a different effort to try and stymie the progressive. But the one thing that is consistent across all these races is that like the progressives just running the race. And then the liberal machine does whatever they can to throw hurdles in front of them, and then it's a matter of how many times you can jump. For the record, I think scandals notwithstanding, of course, I think we're going to see a main primary style beatdown. That's MAINE. Main primary style beatdown in Wisconsin. Even with the governor's endorsement, to me, Tony Evers endorsing Crowley is the same thing as Chuck Schumer endorsing Janet Mills. Like, what are your ideas? Because David Crowley had all the momentum behind him on Friday, had the news opportunities to go out and speak, and he complained about Donald Trump and said that he doesn't view himself as establishment based on identity and didn't have a single thing to say about politics. That to me doesn't track. I'm just checking the comments here on Facebook as well. But so that's the lens through which I look at it. And I've seen a ton of people messaging throughout the thing. I apologize. I wanted to get, yes, the Book of Faces. Thank you, Elf. John says, circling the wagons for Fran. Please help. Thanks. She has the best data center framework. I would agree with that. Herb says, I live real close to one of the approaches to Appleton. Oh, that's an EAA comment. I'll christen him right here and now. Kamala Crowley says CKK. It's starting to smell a lot like 2020, not just wildfire smoke. Jim says nothing against Barnes. Tom Nelson had the best resume in that Senate race. I've got some thoughts about that, but I'll just keep it to myself for the time being. Lorelei says Dems get mad at a leftist accountability, but it's what we ask the Republicans to do the same for MAGA. Can't be hypocritical. I'd agree. You know what's ironic though, Lorelei, is I'd say to a certain extent MAGA is more reminiscent of leftists than the establishment. It's just that MAGA aims a certain demographic of people's ire in the wrong direction, in my opinion, but at least MAGA understands that the system is broken, much like leftists do. And then the Mitt Romney Republicans and the blue MAGA libs try and convince us that the system's fine. What we really need is just a couple more bucks invested in school, and everything else will just fall right into place. Like, we need transcendent leadership that is willing to not just kind of go along with the company line, but actually push back on something, in my opinion. When will people who want change going to learn the Democratic Party doesn't care what they think? Well, CKK, now that's an interesting question, and I've been wrestling with that quite a bit. I actually went to, and we can talk about it more throughout the show. We'll have a little bit of a gap between Chris Alfheim and Chris Larson, depending on how long Chris and I go today. But I was at a DSA meeting on Saturday because I have been asking the same question. I'm actually speaking at a Green Party event on Sunday this week, down in Milwaukee. And I do wonder to a certain extent, because all we ever hear is, liberalism's a big tent. And like that's all well and good until, of course, that big tent is going to be run by a certain flank of the party. And then, you know what? Maybe this tent's not big enough for the both of us. And again, nobody can explain to me as a Democrat why they are anti-leftist. I can tell you the reasons why liberalism, I think, has shortcomings, especially for anybody under 40. But everybody feels that way. But I'm just saying, for the people trying to get a foothold in this economy, I can point to very distinct reasons as to why I think centrism, establishment, liberalism, whatever you want to call it, I can point to issues that I have with it and can still highlight why it's infinitely better than the masked Virgin Army and any of the other ideas that MAGA and the Republican Party might be thrusting on us. Again, if David Crowley wins a free and fair election that doesn't have any, thumb on the scale bullshit coming from liberals, I'll vote for Crowley. But I'll tell you right now, Democrats are playing with fire. And if we see the other candidates drop out and throw their weight behind Crowley, there's a very good chance that the Democrats might be handing this race to Tiffany, and this is a very winnable race. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it says to me, as I often state on this show, that centrists would rather the MAGA candidate be in there than the leftist, because the leftist is the only party of the three that actually represents transcendent change. Whether it's Republican or Democrat, it'll be chewed around the edges. The Democratic option will obviously be better, but it won't be enough. D-Flock. Between the RVs was there as well. Yeah, I believe we chatted for a little bit there, my friend. Random, but did you go on vacay? I haven't seen you in a while, but you look tanner. No, I'm just, thriving on life, Lizard. I appreciate the conversation. I don't take vacations. I'm just here. I see State Senator Chris Alfheim hopping on the backstage there, so we're going to jump into this conversation here, get her perspective on the matter, and as I stated, we'll have a different perspective in the 10 o'clock hour. We're just going to kind of make this the theme of the entire show. If you can't stick around, the show is going to be available on my YouTube page as well as the Minocqua Brewing Substack archives as well. Maybe consider subscribing and follow along if you can't stick around for the entire show today. All right, I'm bringing you up here, Chris. Stand by. Well, hello. How are you today?
Good morning. The fight continues.
There we go. Yes, thank you very much. I'm glad you agreed to come on. Always appreciate having you on here. Last time I saw you was at the Flag Day parade. You told me keep causing good trouble. We didn't know what was happening in 9 days. At least I didn't. Maybe you were on the inside scoop.
I would say since Flag Day, there has been more chaos than any of us expected. That's
Isn't that the
fair to
truth?
say.
Isn't
You know,
that the truth?
you look good on that parade route handing out those flags.
Thank you. Well,
It's a shame WHBY doesn't have you anymore because you were a tremendous addition.
I appreciate that, Chris. And full disclosure, you reached out almost immediately after and were very helpful. And you and I have a relationship outside of media and politics. And so before you even ran, like when you were running as an assembly member, you were one of the first guests. So I appreciate that very much.
Good.
So I invited you on here because I know you and I agree on a lot, but we might have a little bit of a different perspective with what's been going on in the governor's race here. And I'll allow you to just kind of lay out there from your perspective why you think David Crowley re-entering, receiving the governor's endorsement, despite, in my opinion, not really generating a lot of traction or buzz prior to during the first run there, why you think this is the best move that's going to invigorate Wisconsinites to show up in the general.
Yeah. So first, let me preface: I am not part of the cabal of government leadership. In fact, I would be considered quite an outsider if you think about it. I've only been around literally for less than 2 years in my position, and really on the scene for only 4. So I'm not coming to you. I don't have all the answers here, and I want to make sure we understand that. I'm going to share my opinion.
Yes.
My opinion as someone from outside of government, as a business strategic thinker, and then I'll give you a little bit about my feeling inside. But just to preface, I'm not giving the opinion of the legislature. This is just my opinion from little old Fox Valley, Wisconsin. So I think where the conversation needs to start is what we're trying to accomplish. What we are trying to accomplish in Wisconsin is fixing 15 years of absolute atrocious behavior from the majority legislature in Wisconsin. There is, number one, we need to acknowledge that pain exists. Pain exists for the people of Wisconsin and across the country. And there is anger. There's anger at what's happening on a federal level. There's anger what's happening on a state level. There's anger all over the place, and it's valid. So I think the first thing that politicians need to acknowledge is that people are hurting. And when you're hurting and when that goes on for 15 years, there's anger as to why it hasn't gotten better. So before we get into that, I want to talk about the legislature and why this relates to the governor's race. In the 15 years of us being, whipped around by the Republicans in the legislature, the Democrats that we have, the base and everybody that has elected, have had zero power whatsoever. None. Last session, just in the session I've been in here, just on the Senate side, we submitted, I think, 446 bills, 446 pieces of legislation the Democratic Senate submitted that would have addressed childcare, healthcare, housing, cost of living, property taxes, prescription drug costs, you name it. We had 446 cost of living bills. 9 of them got as far as a public hearing. 3 of them made it as far as an executive committee meeting, which means the senators actually voted on it in committee. 0 of them made it to the floor. 0 out of 446 bills. I bring that up because it isn't a lack of effort. It isn't a matter of your Democratic legislators not understanding the pain and having solutions that would put it in play. The majority has ultimate control of whether we even get to talk about it. That's been going on for 15 years. 15 years. And that's just the Senate side. The Assembly puts in more bills than that. Tony Evers, a beloved Tony Evers, has been there for 7.5 years playing goalie in the net. He lets through what's moderately okay for the people of Wisconsin, and he deflects out all of the crap that has come from the Republicans.
If I may, not to throw you off, but I'm with you on that, and I
Mhm.
have stated dozens of times over. That's why you and the Wisconsin Dems have never received my ire, because I understand
Yeah,
that you are hamstrung by all of this.
right.
And my thoughts
Yeah,
on the governor's race has nothing to do with the inaction of 4 years for me, 15 years for anybody that's been living
right,
here throughout the entire time. That
right.
that is not up for
Yeah,
debate.
so
I
but
understand
but
that.
these two conversations go together, right? So this again, there's pain and there is frustration because we haven't been able to fix anything. And I think that leads into the what have the Dems done for me lately conversation. And I think we have to understand not a damn thing. And it's because we can't. That's what a majority does in Wisconsin. So, understanding that leads us into this conversation about the governor. Now, my Democratic friends are huge, and rightly so, about letting the people speak, right? In contrast to the Republicans who are dominated by leadership, right? The Democrats hate the Robin Vosses of the world who dictate what will be said, who will be elected, what we will vote on, whatever that is. We detest the management, the iron fist of Robin Voss. So therefore, we go the opposite direction, and we want everybody to have a voice at all times. That creates a challenge. It's interesting right now, and I watch the left and the right on the socials all the time, and there is both frustration that we don't allow the candidates to be the candidates, and there's frustration that there's a lack of strategy. You can't have both. You can't have a democratic strategy for this election and then be mad when there is any effort to lean it. That's part of the challenge. So we come now to the governor's race. The way the maps have been done, we finally have fair maps. The Senate had their first round of elections. We picked up 4 seats in the last set. This one, we have another 4 seats. We need to pick up 2 to gain the majority. 4 was likely that we will pick up. That's the Senate Dems. And they are in very strong position to do that, no matter who literally is on top. The assembly is much more dangerous. The assembly did not flip last year. Now there is a tailwind. No one doubts that, right? There's a tailwind. So they are looking in good shape to take the majority this year. But it's close. They technically are behind by 5 points. That's the way their maps were drawn, which means it is not easy for the assembly to flip. The majority in the assembly and the Senate give us the control that we have lacked for the last 15 years to actually accomplish what we want. The governor's position, when you have the majority, is not nearly as important because they're not playing defense with their veto pen and they're not actually driving the legislation. The legislature is. That's their job, which we finally are going to have once again because of our maps if we win the majority. So now take it up to the governors. And again, this is all my opinion. The top of the ticket can either help, be neutral, or be negative to the bottom of the ticket.
Sure.
Help means imagine Obama, right? You have Obama on the top of the ticket, and he is pulling with hope, all the joy and the hope of the world, and that positive momentum trickles down to the down ballot. Someone, on the other hand, who may be way out there, right, challenges the bottom of the ticket in the competitive races. These strong blue districts will embrace that and run with it all day long. They will align themselves with the top of the ticket. But if you have competitive maps and you have competitive districts where you may be behind by 5 points or you may be ahead by only 2, the top of the ticket runs the risk of causing more harm than good. And again, I'm not saying what the world thinks. I'm saying from my perspective in a strategic situation. If you have a top of the ticket candidate who is swinging for the fences, that's a beautiful thing for the world and for the people. But the negative to that is that every word that has ever been said by that candidate draws a direct line to every candidate down ballot. So now you have the risk, you have the danger of a purple district, which has been red every year for the last 20 years, that now has the opportunity to turn blue. And money can be floated through on the GOP side to say candidate X aligns with candidate Y. And that's a direct line. So now we have TV ads that say, if you vote for this person, you're agreeing with that. Now, it doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not. It is the reality of the political machine. So go ahead.
I could give a lot of contemporary examples, but since you brought up Obama, I'll just stick with that one. I'd argue he ran as significantly further left than he governed. And when he governed more as a moderate, yeah, there was the big win in 2008 with all the seats, and then there was a 60 seat swing in 2010 because he took the more moderate approach. I understand Wisconsin isn't New York, but whether you look at El Sayed in Michigan, scandals notwithstanding, the excitement Graham Plattner generated in Maine prior to the stories coming out about him there. Obviously, Mamdani, even John Fetterman coming from Pennsylvania before he had his heel turn after getting elected, was very much running as a progressive and won a swing state in Pennsylvania. I guess, where does the conventional wisdom that the leftists going further outside, as I stated to you on socials, I don't think the idea of purple necessarily means moderate. I
Agreed.
don't know that independent means moderate. I view myself as an independent. I most certainly am not a moderate or a centrist.
And
And so I
people
guess what
question mine
leads
as
to
well.
that?
Oh, did I freeze up?
I can hear you still, but
Okay.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I am a purple all day long. A purple doesn't imply that you have moderate milk toast thoughts. It means that you are in a situation based on your demographics that you must consider more than just your own feelings. And I think that's pragmatism, right? This is the Fox Valley. We literally have more businesses in my Senate district than any other district in the state. I don't have a choice, right? So again, I don't begrudge the strong voice. I think, to be honest, the Fran Hung voice, the Ryan Clancy voice, I think they add value because they continue to open up the conversation louder and louder to bigger issues. We have big issues. We do have a healthcare crisis. We have a childcare crisis. We have all of this. That's not the question. The question is, can you win the majority and the governor's house? But I'm starting with the majority because it actually is more important. The person at the top of the ticket, as long as they're blue and we have a blue legislature, we get what we want. If we have a blue at the top and we don't have blue at the bottom, it doesn't matter because the governor can't set policy. He or she can talk from the podium about what they want. They can create a moral document that says in the budget, we want to do this. But what happened to Tony Evers' budget every time he wrote one? It was literally thrown in the garbage, and the Republicans created their own. So the power of the governor is moot, except for the veto pen, unless you have the power of the legislature. So again, it is not a matter of tamping down the reality that the world is realizing we are in trouble. We need to make major changes. Some of those great big strokes have to take place on a federal level. We can't do universal health care.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist, right? We have to work with the broken system that we have. So the anger exists, and it isn't that it's not acknowledged. It's how do we fix it? We all have ideas. I don't care if you're Crowley, if you're Kelda, if you're Franny. I don't care. You all have ideas. It won't matter if we don't have the legislative majority to actually give what you want. So again, I know Franny. I haven't worked in the same body, but I respect Franny. I respect Kelda. I respect Crowley. I respect all of them. The question is, who helps us fix the problem? The idea does not fix the problem. A legislature that has the majority with the Democratic governor does. So why is Crowley back in? I don't begrudge him from getting back in. The only reason he stepped out is because Sarah was crushing him in dollars, and he's a pragmatic man. Do you know how hard it is to run a campaign? It is brutal. It is brutal. It is 60 hours a week trying to do your real job and campaign, and never mind where your family is because you have no idea on a daily basis. So he stepped out because the numbers said he should step out, as should have anybody, to me, in my opinion, that was polling at the bottom 3 to 4 should have dropped out
But
based on
you can at least acknowledge though it just there's already people in the comments before you got on here saying this is starting to feel reminiscent of 2020.
sure. I
Somebody
get
who
it.
shows up that was barely polling at anything, the highest ranking Democrat in the state, immediately throws their weight behind him. Now we're saying anybody else, though, polling at 5% should probably drop out and clear the field at this
I
point.
hear you.
That there's an element of that
Sure.
that's incredibly frustrating for people. And I guess where I would push back on what you're saying is when people say the Democratic Party is too far left, ask them about economics and they'll agree with the leftist position. I oftentimes joke with my friends and I say, when they say the party's too far left, they're talking about Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer dressing in African garb and kneeling for 9 minutes after what took place in Michigan, rather than the economic policy, Medicare for all, pushing back against a lot of these things. Maybe there's some disagreements on ICE and policing there, but by and large, I guess can you sense there was a question over the weekend, I'm sure you saw it, where Mr. Crowley was actually asked, why do you think there's so much frustration within the Democratic electorate? And he blamed Donald Trump. And not like the obvious way
Yeah.
that things are kind of falling
Yeah,
right now
I
in
think
the state.
I think the frustration is, again, it's beyond Trump at this point. I mean, there is pain. And we have a demographic issue, right? We have the bottom, 60% of the population is not keeping up in wages and the costs are sky high. There's no doubt about that. And there does need to be some adjusting. That we need to fix big things, right? I think that the governor, right? And I'm not Tony, and
Yeah.
I have not agreed with him on everything, and I have not disagreed with him on everything. But I will tell you, he has won the state of Wisconsin
Yeah.
during the midst of all of this chaos that has been going on for more than just the last few months. He has won in Wisconsin, even though it went for Trump. You have to give a little bit of clout to that. Again, think beyond. If you can get above the fray and look at what is our goal. Our goal is to fix Wisconsin. Our goal is to win the legislature after fighting for fair maps finally. Our goal is to have a Democratic leader. And Tony has never been, we know this, and you can watch the socials. There's plenty of people in the legislature on our team that have been angry with him. What did you want him to do with a Republican majority? You don't get to drive answers. And yet he won, which means there's something to learn from that. And we can be disappointed that he didn't accomplish more, but how is that going to happen when you have zero power in the legislature? He did the best he could. So I think where Tony's coming in, Tony has never been a blue person, red person. He has been, get us a leader who can try and drive us through this. And again, I don't know Tony. I know Tony, but I don't know his thought process. But when you look at the people on the board, did we actually see anybody? Did he see anybody? Because this isn't me or anybody else. Did he see anybody on the ticket that he felt had the ability to take us to where we need to go? Apparently not.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, it's an
Apparently not.
interesting take. I can't dispute that he did win the state in 2022 and in 2018. I'd
And
also
he won 3. He's won 3 statewide.
Sure. I'd also argue Democrats would have won statewide in 2024 if they let us pick the candidate. That's a
I'm not going to
conversation.
argue. There's so many things you can throw in the air. All I'll say is this. Again, sometimes I think our party is our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Because what we want is full expression. What we want is we want to play out democracy in the truest form, which is anyone has a shot. And in this moment, I think that the larger voices that we don't always hear from are stepping up for the voice that is most outside the box, right? And I respect that. But we also have to remember that we're only hearing people that are kind of already near that box. The 30% or more of the population isn't tuning into any of these shows. They're
Sure.
not listening to the right wing. They're not listening to the middle. They're not listening to anybody. And that 30% is actually who controls this election. So we can froth, we can rev up, we can do everything we want to the base and the new youth base that is saying, hey, look at this. I like the sound of this. It still doesn't change the fact that 30% of the population is not paying attention. And they are sitting here looking at all of the everything like, why? And there is fear in the middle 30%. There's fear of the Donald Trump-esque, which is Tiffany, and there's fear of the Bernie Sanders, which is Franny Hong. I'm not saying they're right. I'm saying it's a reality. And our job is to reality win the state of Wisconsin at the top and at the legislature. So again, I'm not the insider. I've not been pulling strings and reins in Wisconsin for over a decade. I'm telling you, as a business person from the outside, what is our goal? And to accomplish our goal, we need both the top house and all of the legislative voices. And inside of that legislative voices, there will be and there should be strong voices on the deep side, because that's what keeps our party going forward. And the question is whether it makes sense to have the strongest voice at the top. And does that actually add value, or does it jeopardize? That's the discussion that's going on. That's the discussion.
We're speaking with State Senator Chris Alfheim. I appreciate you so much taking 20 minutes here to jump on here and give us your perspective on matters here. I'm
sure your chat line's going to be cray-cray after that one.
Oh, I'm sure. But you know what? We need to have these conversations on shows like this, because right-wing media is foaming at the mouth to try and paint this like something that it isn't. So I think it's important to have the real conversations and then let those kind of speak for themselves. So thank you for coming on. I think this was important, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, friend.
Yep.
Keep up the fight.
Bye. Thank you. Yeah. So obviously, she and I get along on a personal level. From that being said, I don't agree with her assessment on the matter, and that's okay. We can do that and then move on. But I personally, and I'm going to post the link here for anybody that wants it. Anybody on YouTube or on TikTok that wants to chime in, just request to speak on the matter. We're just talking Wisconsin governor's race here. It's not open talk. So if we can keep it a little focused on the point of the conversation here today, I would appreciate that very much. But I welcome anybody who wants to chime in on what they just heard right there. We're going to be hearing from somebody that, in my opinion, we haven't spoken about this off the air, but Chris Larson, I'm pretty sure, is probably going to be more in favor of allowing the chips to fall where they may. Which will give you a little bit of a different perspective within the Democratic Party from another state senator, albeit representing Milwaukee as opposed to the Fox Valley. Obviously, a different demographic of people down there. But I still didn't hear anything during that conversation that convinced me that leftism is innately unelectable, that it would make the people at the bottom of the ticket less electable by having a leftist on board rather than the opposite. And I meant to say it. This is why I should write my notes down, but I'm too busy being the Jay-Z of talk radio. Bernie Sanders in 2016 in the primary pulled in 130,000 more votes. I don't remember how much Hillary lost by in Wisconsin, but I know it wasn't a lot. I know it definitely wasn't 130,000. And it goes to show you that when the will of the people is subverted, you'll never be able to convince me, based on policy, reaction, the aftermath, knowing what we know now, fill in the blank. You'll never convince me that the fear of Bernie and the left is greater than that of centrism in establishment politics. That is the fear. And like I said it with a smile, but a lot of truth was said in jest. When Republicans say they hate how left the Democratic Party is, they're talking about Chuck Schumer and a dashiki kneeling for 9 minutes. They're not talking about holding healthcare companies to account for fleecing the American population. And I still have not been presented with an argument that makes me think, oh, I never thought about it that way. Like, I recognize that there are people out there that are going to call people like Fran, Bernie, myself, a communist. But I also know that if I moderated my beliefs, if Fran or Bernie moderated their beliefs on economics, they wouldn't receive more of those centrist votes. They would just discourage more of the other votes from coming out. And I feel like there's pretty ample evidence of that at this point. And I mean, the parallels, assuming everybody stays in the race that's in the race right now, I think everybody can calm down. And again, I am projecting as of right now a um main primary style beatdown. Like, for those of you that don't know, and I know Jen's in the chat, message me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain it was like 72 to 28 or something like that in terms of what the final percentage was in Maine. So, like, I'm predicting something like that because I genuinely do believe Hong has that kind of a backing, specifically in the Blue Bastions. And what's funny is, if you haven't seen my Facebook message or my Facebook post, somebody posted, looks like the race is going to be won in the Fox Valley. And I reposted it and said, I'll take reasons my show was canceled for 1,000, Alex. Because I do believe that, and I believe it's important for us to have an actual conversation about this and not let the establishment powers that be, that's both Republican and Democratic, spin what's actually happening out there. And I'm not accusing Chris of doing that, but I'm saying that the people who want to convince us that it's not, that leftism isn't electable, I need proof of purchase because I'm struggling to buy into that conceit in 2026. Allie, I see you hopped on TikTok. Hold on here. Let me turn my thing up here and then yeah, what's on your mind?
Okay, I'll be nice. I took a deep breath. Are we all around? We're good. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I just want to come from, I guess, a youth vote state of mind. And granted, yes, I'm not in Wisconsin. I understand that. I'm from PA, which in and of itself is also purple. So I'm going to sort of speak from, I guess, more of that perspective of just coming from like a battleground state that does sort of.
Sure.
I feel like purple's just like a cover for not getting anything done. But like so I go to Penn State, so it's like a pretty large campus with a ton of like college students from like this area. And like when it comes to electability in politics, which it seems like there was less talk about electability than there was strategy, and I think that's sort of what scares the youth vote, especially like those that are in the college setting. I've noticed there's a lot of, if we hear something that's similar to what Kamala was campaigning on or Trump, it has that like visceral reaction because of the years of disappointment from the Dems. And I think that sort of perspective is what's growing on the Democrat side. It's like it started with the youth because the youth is loud, we're naive, we just scream things, we're radical, whatever. But I think that it's super important to look at the youth vote, especially in like battleground states, because they do lean more progressive. In my opinion, like if you look at polls and everything like that, Mamdani broke records in New York for getting a historic youth vote out. And I think that it's only growing from there because I know that she had mentioned like she's looking at social media and everything. And that is the main thing. And I don't know if you, from like what you see doing media, if you see similar patterns in more of the youth votes with leftists.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only do I see it in the more contemporary examples, but as I know, because you listen most days, I oftentimes talk about the 7 million vote reduction within the 18 to 29 demo during the Kamala Harris campaign. And I think when people hear these things, I mean, realistically, I don't need to tell you, even though a governor doesn't really have much to do with the matter, how you speak on our allies in the Middle East and what they're doing matters to voters. And if you remember, Crowley was one of the two people, along with Rodriguez, who chose to blow off the Wisconsin Muslim Alliance. That, in and of itself, is going to be something that is held against him were he to come out of the primary, regardless of what a governor can actually do on the matter. And then you go to the economic policies. I, for one, have been very vocal about continuing to fund public schools. Regular listeners for the last 4 years know I've been a staunch advocate for that. It cannot begin and end with that, because as much as I want to see public schools funded, that doesn't do a damn thing for me. And there's a lot of people funneled into that group, and I feel like the more establishment flank is going to push big on tax investment into public schools, which is great, and then be like, well, I can't dust my hands off because I only have one available hand right now, but dust my hands off and we're done here. And I'm worried about that. So I think your assessment on the matter is not only relevant, but I think it's been borne out time and time again. Even in Wisconsin, we have our Supreme Court races in April, and you see UW Eau Claire with 1,000-person long line to go and vote for a Supreme Court justice because the women in this state wanted to defend abortion access at the time. And the list goes on and on. So I think your assessment's spot on as far as I'm concerned.
I'm glad I'm not like some crazy schizo or anything, but
I didn't say that.
I've got, okay, all right. Well, I'll thank you after I finish my tangent. Got to get my airtime. Anyways,
okay.
I think going off of what you said, like whenever it's like, okay, we're gonna fund public schools. I think one thing, especially in like the like earlier millennial to older Gen Z, now that like we are facing this huge like housing crisis and then cost of living crisis, which includes groceries and now gas, like all of these things that like are problems that really are new to younger adults, at least from my perspective and a bunch of my friends, like trying to find resources or ways to get around the things that they do. I do believe that, like personally, like I've had 2 house fires in my history and I've not been able to get resources in Pennsylvania. And like, that's something that never gets talked about. And then I think like those little problems that we all start to face are starting to like bubble up because the economy only makes it worse. It hardens everything. And now people are like, well, if you could just start a program to where I could start in a tiny house or any little movement would work.
Sure. I would agree. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I can't take away from anything you said there. I always appreciate when you chime in, Allie. That was a good deep breath. I think you made a lot of good points.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Also, not an arsonist, swear to God, that there were just really poorly timed fires. Anyways.
Yeah. Okay. See ya. Bye now. And Kristen, I hope you're still there, and I hope everyone in the chat is being nice to people here. What's up, Eric? But I feel what you're saying in terms of the complexities, and as I've stated, as long as there's no, shitty attitudes coming from centrists, I absolutely am going to vote for whoever comes out of this. I just get nervous about what's happening right now. And I believe, as I always state, progressive politics are not represented in a way that does progressive politics justice. I will maintain until I am dead that Republicans are not turned off by leftist economic idea. They're turned off by wokeness. And as stupid as that is in and of itself, I think it's very easily disputable. So, but I also do get Kristen's point that not everyone in the chat is from the state, but conversely, I have people in Maine who watch a progressive candidate get screwed over. I have people listening from New York who watched the Democratic Party throw their weight behind a 12 times accused sexual harasser rather than embrace a progressive. Obviously, we saw what happened to Bernie twice. There comes a time when the reality has to be acknowledged here. CKK says, if you can't afford groceries, just eat out more. Jarman, who says, my 76-year-old friend, aunt in very far north Wisconsin is even supporting Fran. It's not just the youth. I've seen conservatives endorse Fran. Like, the list goes on and on. I think it's pretty difficult to ignore. We've got Ecuadorian on TikTok. What's on your mind, man? You there? What's on your mind?
How are you doing today?
All right, about yourself.
I'm doing okay. So I just need to make one thing blatantly obvious about all this. Ladies and gentlemen, with all this back and forth between the progressive Democrats and the, Republicans, there's no point in this constant back and forth. It's doing nothing. It's basically like playing baseball with a team that can't beat each other. There's no point. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of civilian taxpayer money. And what we all need to do is find a way for each side to come together and start figuring out what you want your city identity to be, how much you want to allocate, figure out a fixed threshold so that the city can figure out, okay, how much do we want to spend and how much do we avoid spending? That is how you rebuild a city, because you cannot build a city when you don't have an identity, when your city has no idea how to spend money properly. You're not using it to help your community, because your community is what helps your city grow. So does tourism. If you don't deal with tourism as well, you will not grow. That's just the honest truth.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, Ecuadorian, is I agree with what you're saying, but what I oftentimes state is if you show me a blue state, I'll show you a state struggling with poverty. If you show me a red state, I'll show you a state struggling with poverty. And if you show me a purple state, I'll show you a state that's stagnating and struggling with poverty. All three of them, it seems like, are letting us down, but just through different measures. But really, no state's really knocking it out of the park right now.
Exactly. And that's the problem. None of them have any idea what they want their city to look like. They don't have identity. They're not figuring out how do we make our community come together as one to figure out what they want their community to look like. If you're not spending the money wisely, the community will get frustrated because they're seeing no progress being made, nothing is changing, and you're gonna get more upset citizens. That's just the honest truth.
Absolutely. I appreciate the call.
Is that
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I'd argue that's how Republicans win. That's the duopoly in action there. Is Republicans show up, mess everything up, Democrats take control, really don't fix a whole lot, and then inevitably enough people are like me are like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just writing my own name in this year. And then the Republican goes back into office, and around we go.
interest?
Right. Hey, I appreciate the call, man. Good stuff as per usual. You take it easy.
You as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and Kristen, I see you say after Fran wins the primary, they'll get in line behind her. I agree. And for the record, I think assuming the election is on the up and up, I'd say that's true of anybody. And every single one of these candidates is pulling ahead of Tom Tiffany. Again, we act like leftism is so extreme. We have a 700% increase in farming bankruptcies. We've got a war that nobody asked for, where American soldiers lost their lives last night. We've got a cost of living crisis that was actually trending in the right direction at the end of the Biden administration, while still being far too expensive, only astronomically shooting back up as we're looking at more interest rate increases by the Fed by the end of the year. All of these are endorsed by Tom Tiffany. And they're like, 6 years ago, Fran one time said defund the police. And then the Democratic president who ended up winning in 2020 went on to fund the police all 4 years, increasing their funding every single year. I think we're just playing into a Republican narrative that isn't real. That's not real life. Like, maybe we should, instead of attacking the left, just let those policies play out. Let the elections, play out, see what policies end up being more popular, while highlighting the fact that the 5'2" phenom Tom Tiffany is absolutely screwing over this state with every single decision that he ultimately ends up making. Brian says, funny, we are talking about money spent on cities. I bet there is not a column for rural expenditures. Well, I feel like that's the implication when people say cities. They just mean like, towns, villages, whatever. Your community would probably be a better term than cities. Ben, tell me what cities fund for rural infrastructure. I mean, all of it, right? Wasn't Joe Biden putting rural broadband funded by the government all across the country, which was a net positive, in my opinion, because in 2026, if you don't have access to the internet, you basically don't exist. You're not going to be able to find a job. You're not going to be able to network. You can't do any of that kind of stuff. So, to me, I feel like there's very obvious examples of progressivism and liberal politics addressing rural areas, in a way that, hell, the post office. I feel like I have to defend the post office twice a week to some jag in my comments because they're like, it's losing money. No, it's not losing money. It's costing money because the post service isn't a business; it's a service. You don't say the police are costing you or costing you money or losing you money. You say they're costing you money because the police aren't supposed to be making you money. Although anybody who was driving on the roads in Northeast Wisconsin this weekend would argue they absolutely are here to make money. Did you see how many cops were on the road this weekend? The fuck was that all about? Um, Was broadband put in for the people or big business? I mean, that's a fair question, Larry. Like, very much that could have been part of the element as well. But, like, I have to admit, again, I'm not looking for work. I think I'm going to work for myself for the foreseeable future. Um, but if I were and I didn't have internet access, that would be a much larger mountain to climb, to say the very least. On the Facebook, Kim says, or on the Book of Faces, I voted for Tony and true with our Republican legislature, nothing would ever happen. But in the primary, this boomer is voting for Francesca for governor and keeping my representative Lori Palmieri. Love that. Eric just simply says 100%. Jeremy says every comment about seeing how people act when nobody is watching was probably unnecessary and harmful to any non-Crowley Democrats. I don't know what you're referencing there, Jeremy. I wish it was 8 minutes ago. If you're still listening, can you please can you highlight? I'm going to read Evers' comment about seeing how people act when nobody was watching was probably unnecessary and harmful to any non-Crowley Democrats. I mean, he endorsed Crowley, so clearly that's the route that he wants to take. Okay, you're on TikTok now. I didn't see his statement. Tom says the Republicans will be voting in primary. Will they be voting for Hong? That's the wild card in this primary. Here's the thing, and I saw somebody mention it, and I apologize. I have comments coming from everywhere, so I don't remember who said it. PBS NewsHour was running a thing saying that Republicans are running ads to get Francesca Hong nominated. Allow me to show you exactly how liberalism works, because that's the perfect example. The Republican Party is running ads attacking Francesca Hong. That's what's happening. For those of you guys that haven't seen them, they call her a liberal Francesca Hong, which is hilarious. They are running ads attacking Hong. And I would argue, I've never been in politics, but as a basic understander of general strategy, you don't do attack ads for people that you don't view as a threat. I believe the Republican Party is already attacking Francesca Hong because she is probably going to come out of this primary. And then liberals come out and tell you, see, they're attacking Francesca Hong to bolster her name. What's up, Sensei? They want to bolster her name so that she comes out of the primary and then it's easy pickings from there. I'm telling you right now, the Republican Party is more afraid of Francesca Hong than David Crowley. David Crowley is going to run on Isn't Donald Trump Scary? Francesca Hong, you can love her, you can hate her. She has a strategy already for data centers. She has strategies for taxation. She has laid her policies out there, and none of it is based in fear mongering or identity politics. The Republicans would love to run against a guy talking about identity and Donald Trump. They would not like to run against somebody who has fully fledged ideas and is able to defend their capacity to make their points about the failings of this administration beyond isn't Trump scary? As TR says on TikTok, and she cites sources. I'm saying. Brian says, as Ecuadorian stated, let's put together some combined progressive idea. Anything that is new, if it don't work, switch and continue. Anything is better than nothing at all. That's my attitude. If we tried ideas that I talk about on this show and they were failures, I'd be like, oh, well, that's a shame. I really thought that was going to work. Anyway, who's got a new idea? The only thing I know that absolutely isn't working is maintaining the status quo. FCC just ordered a study on how we're funding the Universal Service Fund for low-cost cell phone and broadband to determine if they need to change it. Hope they don't make it worse. They will. Spoiler warning, they're going to make it worse. But so, we have a second guest coming on the program at 10:30. It's going to be State Senator Chris Larson. Represents the Milwaukee area. He and I used to do a recurring podcast together on Wednesdays through the Minocqua Brewing Company. I haven't spoke to him in a couple months though, and I reached out to him this morning to get to see if he wanted to come on, and he was down. So he will be on at 10:30. We're going to get his perspective on the matter as well. The conversation is going to basically be run through the same attitude that I just kind of exemplified for you guys right there. Clearly, I mean, I don't pull my punches and I wear my beliefs on my sleeve. I have my favorite in this race just because I'm a policy guy. I am a show me how you intend to do things. Don't talk to me about how bad Donald Trump is. Don't talk to me about how corrupt Donald Trump is. Not to say those are false or inaccurate statements. They absolutely are. But don't tell me how bad he is. Tell me not only that you're great, convince me that you're great. It was either Walter Payton or Gail Sayers, I can't remember which one it was, says if you're good at something, you'll tell people. When you're great at something, they'll tell you. Have me tell you how great you are. Don't tell me you're great. Yeah, Kristen, I agree. Data centers, I think data centers and flock cameras are the two mainline issues. In fact, I was speaking with a libertarian candidate a couple weeks ago, and I said, if you want to put together a campaign that's actually going to make noise, run on flock cameras. And I promise people will show up. The PBS take was that the ads would agitate Hong voters and get them to the polls. But old lid, let me ask you, if they were running those about Sarah Rodriguez, do you think PBS would be saying the exact same thing? Because I'm here to tell you they're not. They wouldn't. They'd be like, oh, if the primaries still had the exact same parties involved, except for the GOP were attacking Sarah Rodriguez instead of Francesca Hong, you know what the Democratic line would be? They're attacking Sarah Rodriguez because they know that's their biggest threat. So they're trying to tamp her down so she doesn't come out of the primary. You see how they just change the narrative? The same thing happens, but the description surrounding it changes. Northwood's Progressive, just really quick PSA. Marionette City Town Hall for anybody who's listening in that region. At 4:30 today, there's a Council for Public Safety Committee meeting for Flock. You can go make a public comment. That's 4:30 today in Marionette. But yeah, I think people are just sick and tired of the games. I hope this weekend's reaction, and honestly, I don't think that this all happened on a Friday by accident, and I'm glad that it happened on a Friday because, to be perfectly frank, I basically abstained from social media this weekend, partially because I was incredibly busy all weekend, but also because I didn't want to say something that I regretted later. Because I was very mad Friday afternoon when I was watching all of this stuff transpire. And I went to a friend of mine's house Friday evening, and it's like I opened the door talking about it. Like, it's Friday night, we're not here to do this. And of course, I was there to do it. TR says she stole several hours of my time. Absolutely. I was talking about that earlier. I was at the DSA meeting checking things out. But and I'm glad though that I kind of kept my mouth shut because I was able to get my thoughts in order and approach this from a perspective that makes a little bit more sense now. But I mean, a story came out in NPR yesterday saying that ICE shared Medicaid data with Palantir. You know who's not popular? Palantir. Do you know what a great message it would be politically to be anti-ICE at a time when they're sharing your personal data with Palantir? I have a suggestion. You know what I mean? The idea that being anti-ICE is somehow uniquely polarizing. As I've stated on my show before, abolish ICE has become the moderate position. I can't say what the leftist position is anymore because TikTok will ban me, but let's just say the leftist position on ICE at this point is a bit more extreme than abolishment. With the 15% approval rating for Donald Trump, is it still good to be tied to his coattails? Seems like a serious issue. And someone explained to me in the 15% column, is that a real number, or are you being hyperbolic, Brian? Is 15% actually where it's at? And to your point, if you notice, not the first time I've said it, Tom Tiffany hasn't mentioned Donald Trump's name once. Hell, I was told by an insider, I can't remember who anymore, that they were at a Dem event, or excuse me, a Republican event. Oh, I remember who it was. They were at a Republican event, and they had a cardboard board cutout standing up, and it was of J.D. Vance. It wasn't even of Donald Trump. That's kind of wild, huh? I'm posting the link in the tube of you again for any of the tube of yours. Brian, you should figure out how to use that link if you're not driving and jump on and get your thoughts heard. I'm trying to get the regulars to figure out how to use these links so that we can still take calls. Right. Sensei saying, so pose the question is, well, why is Palantir and ICE colluding against America? Exactly. Oh, don't worry about it, Ecuador. But that's my point. And you know who would get in line with that, Sensei? Conservatives. Conservatives would be like, wait, ICE is doing what? And again, any conservatives that ever listen outside the box, it wouldn't be the first time you'd even heard that on my show. I stated 1,000 times over. ICE is all well and good when they're targeting brown people. Wait until they're targeting people not wearing a mask during a pandemic. Wait until they're targeting people that left a comment underneath a Proud Boy post. You know what I mean? Then all of a sudden they realize, wait, government overreach is bad again. Now this is happening to me. I realize this is bad again. Because that's what it takes for these people, unfortunately. Jim says, to paraphrase a MAGA line, lock them up. ICE, that is. Exactly. Right there with you. But so, What's the date? The 20th. So what does that give us? It's July. So 11 and 11, 22 days before the Wisconsin primary. When you're going to see all hell break loose is when Kelda Royce drops out. I hope I'm wrong. And like, just to be frank, I have there's always a human element to this show, right? And I realize the violets of the world are gonna punch me in the face when they meet me in person for saying stuff like this. But there's a human element to this show that I think makes it separate from a lot of others. Like I used to say, and now that I've been fired publicly, it only even hits harder. But I would say, I used to talk shit on football coaches all the time until I became a public facing figure. And then when you're being inundated with messages about all the ways you suck at your job and the ways you could do your job better, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let football coaches coach because they're people too. And what do I really know about their job? So I'm just going to back off. If I'm Kelda Royce and Mandela Barnes, I am fucking pissed right now. You chose to back a guy because throughout the entire race, both Barnes and Kelda, Barnes has been polling at a consistent between 1 and 3rd place, essentially the entire race. And when the centrist backs out, the governor's like, hey, the guy that was polling at 1.5% the entire time should get back in and I'll endorse him. And it's like, again, this is not a Barnes or Roy's endorsement, but like they both very clearly. Do you know how many people listen to this show and tell me I'm between Roy's and Hong? Do you know how many people tell me I'm going to go for Barnes, but if Hong comes out, I would absolutely vote for Hong? You know how many people told me they were Crowley people? None. Not a single one. I did see, and I mean, I'm going to try and get him on this week, Dan Schaefer, the recombobulation area, who's in Milwaukee. Obviously, in the Fox Valley, we're going to have a different opinion of the Milwaukee County executive, right, than the people of Milwaukee. Like, maybe that's why there's not as much David Crowley buzz. But to be honest, Francesca Hong was a Madison representative in the assembly, and look at the statewide appeal she was able to generate. That simply did not happen with Crowley. It did not happen. And the audacity to turn around and endorse that person. And as I've stated, the black vote has not been particularly represented in a lot of the polling data that we've seen. Thanks for chiming in, Daniel. And there is an element of identity. As much as I can't stand identity politics, I do understand black identity and the way that some members of that community end up kind of coalescing around the candidate that they think would most represent them. And I get that. I get that. I disagree that Crowley would represent them more than Hong would, but I understand the principle of I want people to look like me in the position because I know if they look like me, they'll look out for me. I'd argue Obama is direct evidence to the contrary of that, but also it's not my lived experience. So I get that. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic. But I'm telling you right now, I'm projecting like a 72-28 style beatdown. Are you doing a Crowley joke, Violated Elf, because of the Black Sabbath song Mr. Crowley? Or is it a Victor Crowley joke from the horror franchise Hatchet 1, 2, and 3, and then the 4th movie just simply called Victor Crowley, which was actually the best one, ironically enough. Left Wing Gorilla says Barnes couldn't beat Ron Johnson. Oh, I agree. I do think he'd win this time around because I think every candidate would win. Yeah, Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think he would win, but yes, I understand why there's a little bit of consternation around him for sure. Kay says, I am very sympathetic to the frustrations of Maine voters. Yeah, I feel like Jen's in the comments right now, and she's been stating, she's in a Discord chat that I'm in with about 30 or so people, and she always states, she's like, just wait, it's coming for Wisconsin. Granted, Hong doesn't have the kind of baggage that Plattner had, but it doesn't change. They tried to hit her with, she has $30,000 of credit card debt, and all that happened was a bunch of millennials and Gen Zers were like, "Oh, she like me," and then we moved on, because that's not a sign of failure to anybody under 40. It's a sign of living in America. To anybody under 40, if that's the best they can do from a scandal standpoint, they're going to have to beat her through electoral shitbaggery, and we'll see if that ends up happening. Yeah, Plattner's out, Sensei. But it's gonna be a long 22 days. And it's gonna be extra long because now I'm trying to find that sweet spot, because I know it's the reason I didn't get fired in 2024, is that I didn't pretend like Democrats were good when they obviously sucked. It was only once I started not pretending that Republicans were good that it became a problem. But I know right-wing media listens to this show because I see the turns of phrase that I use. They do everything short of saying waka waka when they make posts. And it's finding that sweet spot between knowing that they are itching at the opportunity to sow chaos. Hell, some of the people in these chats right now might be here just to fucking egg the divide between liberals and leftists even further than it already is. If a Democratic shill beats Hong on the up and up, I will accept that loss. It is the constant Machiavellian machinations behind the scenes that screw over leftists that piss me off. I don't know his stance on guns, CKK. You should check his website. I'm not familiar. And so I am like in a perpetual state of measuring my words and trying to find a way to have this conversation, letting liberals know I'm not here for it, and I will call it out. And if it gets shitty, I will absolutely use this platform to cause chaos. But at the same time, I know that there's a lot of bad faith efforts. As of right now, nothing super shitty has happened outside of endorsing. I see you, Garnett. I'll get you on in a second. Outside of the sitting governor endorsing somebody who didn't have a snowball's chance in hell 10 days ago after saying he wasn't going to endorse anybody. But it's if the other candidates start to drop out and they also endorse Crowley, then we're going to have an issue. And I don't want right-wingers to exploit it in bad faith because they know people like me out there exist, and something tells me something like this caller here who wants to chime in. I'm bringing you up. Is it Garnett or Garnet? What's the inflection?
So I usually say Garnet.
Garnet, perfect.
It's kind of like hit that G and let the rest of it fall out of your mouth.
Perfect. All right. How are you today?
Doing good.
Just a quick aside. I have Chris Larson coming on soon, so we gotta wrap up. But yeah, what's on your mind?
Absolutely. The biggest thing I just wanted to jump on here and talk about is like the Kelder Royce of it all, right? Kelda's a fighter. I don't think that she's gonna drop out. But if she does drop out, I can't imagine her backing Crowley.
Okay, good.
Unless there is some like values based, right? Unless there is some like serious like leverage being used on her behind the scenes, I don't see her dropping out. I don't see her endorsing Crowley. If that happens, you're correct. That's gonna screw with a lot of folks. But I actually wonder if she would drop out. I wonder if she would she's either gonna end up behind Mandela or behind Fran. I would be really surprised if she ends up behind Crowley, unless there's some real leverage being
I agree.
given.
I
Yeah.
agree. Do you think, and I just got a text from Chris saying he's running a little late, so now we have
Right.
a minute or two here. Do you think the Evers endorsement carries weight? I said, I compared it to Chuck Schumer endorsing Janet Mills. Maybe not that bad, because I don't think it's going to scare people away. I don't think people hate Governor Evers, like they do Schumer. Do you think that endorsement's going to carry any weight?
I do, actually, which is one of the reasons that it's frustrating, is because there are a lot of people that are not involved in like activism for Dem-aligned policy, that they believe the thing that's like, oh, of course he's good. And of course I'm going to trust him, because that was the big push for him for a long time.
Sure.
And so I do think that in absence of other programming to undo that programming, I think that programming stands. I think that's what we saw in the Dane County straw poll. Did you see this nonsense?
I don't think I did. No.
Okay. So this is nonsense, but basically it went 19 Crowley, 19 Kelda, and then Fran took like 11 or 14, and then it went
Mandela.
Crowley, or yeah, 19 Crowley, 19 Kelda, 11 or 14 to Fran, and then it went Mandela, and then Joel received 9 as well. And so like that is kind of what the breakdown of it was, and that just tells me that they probably received a lot of programming just prior to that poll being given, because that county would not have gone Crowley. Not that county party.
Yeah,
that's a
sure.
very left county party. That county party does not go Crowley without the Evers endorsement, and it does not go Crowley without programming being given.
That's
and so that Dane County straw poll was like got a lot of people a little spicy. The Wisconsin Resist crew actually also put out like a very informal poll, but we've surpassed 1,000 votes on that, which means it's statistically significant, and it's hard hung. And so I think that that's interesting, and it just doesn't follow.
Brian, I see you backstage. We'll bring you up when we wrap up here. I apologize for interrupting. I'm getting used to this here. Yeah, but go on.
Yeah. Well, so I think that it is interesting that we have different groups doing different data, but the Dane County going so strong Crowley tells me that programming is being offered for Crowley, and programming is continuing to sail for
that's interesting
for Evers. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
I'll pop off.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I appreciate the insight, though. That was good stuff. Thank you for being here. You need to connect with a mic. You need a mic, Brian. It says you're not here with a mic. Is it turned on your phone? You might need to go into your settings. These boomers in technology, right, Brian? Stevie says the endorsement carries weight against Barnes more than for Crowley, which that's interesting. Lorelei seems to agree. And Old Lib says the boomer in me fears the Tiffany win. Do you think the majority of Wisconsin voters would vote for a Democratic Socialist woman of color if Holm gets through the primary? Hopefully, I'm wrong. I do. I think the idea. Look, I will say this: anyone who isn't going to vote for her based on those specific stipulations aren't going to turn around and vote for a black man. The end. That would be my point there. Hell, I'd be willing to bet they wouldn't even vote for a white liberal. Like, I think it's just the excuses that they give themselves to not vote for somebody. The idea that somebody can stand up and be anti data center at a time when it's so uniquely unpopular, when you can stand up with concrete ideas to address healthcare and housing and so many other factors. I'm hard pressed to buy into anything people to any reason people would give for that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's two state senators. There's people asking on TikTok. So Chris Alfheim, who was on in the 9 o'clock hour, is the state representative or state senator for Fox Valley, which is where I'm at. Chris Larson, who I've actually had on the show before because he had proposed some bills to discuss bail reform a while back. He represents the Milwaukee area also as a Wisconsin state senator. So they are equivalent in title and ranking, but with a different perspective on matters, which I intentionally did. I actually reached out to 4 or 5 people literally this morning to try and get them on, and thankfully a couple of them got back to me. You're all good, Brian. It's probably in the settings on your phone, but we'll figure it out for you. We'll get you on there. I'm trying to help Cynthia learn how to do it as well so we can get her back on the program too. Do you know how many people message me privately and they're like, "I'm so happy you're still doing the show. I love this show. I wish I could hear from Cynthia more." It's a lot of you. The message has been received. Cynthia was the reason you guys were tuning in. I was just the window dressing. We're going to get her back on eventually. She's going through some personal strife, lost a family member. I know how that goes. So we'll see there. CKK says Crowley's website doesn't show a position on 2A topics. Fran's website has a textbook Gifford Bloomberg paragraph on gun or pew pew control. Did Ben get you my email? I probably didn't. I need to remember even what that was. I apologize, dude. I'm burning the candle. I have to look at even what that was. But so why are we talking about that in the chat right now? That's an interesting take, looking at how we stop, I can't say the big F word on this stream, fennel seeds. I'll call it that. I think I was told that's how you can kind of get away with it. Someone's saying that's their big issue. That's absolutely valid. I don't know how, I've always been a big I probably shouldn't open that can of worms moments before I'm expecting a state senator to come on, but we'll see about that as time goes on. That whole conversation there just shut my brain down there, if you guys can't tell. But I think it's a difficult question to answer that doesn't have any simple answers. But I think it's a valid concern, especially in the Midwest. Nevertheless, you're talking to a guy who's lost 3 people in his life to that bastard drug. So I don't know what to call it. So yeah, I feel where you're coming from there for sure. But so we're at an impasse. We're going to get a second politician's beliefs in just a few moments. Ali says there's many answers and it starts with progressives. I agree. It ain't building a wall. Like, prohibition never works with that kind of stuff. See, that's why this will be a great talking point while we wait for Chris to get on. When people say Fran's attitude towards restructuring police is somehow damning, Arthur in TikTok brings up a question. He says, how do we stop the thing that people have been ODing on? I don't know what words I can and can't say, this stupid fucking app. But taking the certain kind of substance that has been taking people's lives for the better part of this decade here, in conjunctions with another crisis that was prescribed by doctors, you don't stop it by penalizing it. You don't stop it by making it a crime to do it. You can make it a crime to sell it. You should definitely make it a crime to sell it, but you shouldn't be making it to do it. That's why I'm very big on the vending machines that provide people with the necessary tools to prevent an OD. Because we shouldn't be penalizing, criminalizing, shaming a lot of the people who are addicted to those rugs, if you will. Became that way because they started off with prescriptions. They started off with a regular way to do it. Their insurance determined they no longer needed it, and people are going to go their own route to do it. Yeah, it's a very dangerous topic. I get it, but I'm not going to let TikTok dictate the way I do my show. Tenphenol. I actually like that a lot. CKK says a question. We spent a lot of time talking about Fran being a DSA candidate, but why don't we ever talk about the race between Rick Crossan and Kat DeVille for the nom in the 8th District? Oh, we will be. I was at a Crossan event. I saw DeVille at the Flock meeting on Wednesday. I'm intending to get them both on, if not this week. I guess every day but Friday last week, and I already have a candidate for the middle of the state coming on tomorrow, but I intend to get them all on. So I feel that. Back at you, Arthur. I wish I had a Fran shirt to wear to my union meeting tonight to gauge people's reactions. Again, while Fran is super strong on unions, I'd argue every candidate within the Democratic Party is good on unions, unless anybody has a thought otherwise. I've been wrong about stuff, but I'm pretty sure that my assessment of unions and attitudes towards unions, I think every single candidate would repeal Act 10. You know what I mean? I think every single candidate would do what they could to make it easier to join a union in the state of Wisconsin. Oh, unions matter in primaries. I'm not saying they don't matter. I'm saying if I were a union rep, like I'd obviously have my preferences, and if that's what you're saying, CKK, I get your point, but I don't feel like they'd be like, I would never vote for that person, because there is no like, I'm trying to be a Republican with a D next to my name candidate. I agree with Lorelei's take on YouTube. She says, I would argue that she is invigorating the left base, will encourage a bigger turnout as long as the blue, no matter who, doesn't completely change their support post primary, she'll dominate. I hope so. I hope so. It's now we gotta hold our breath. See, this fundamentally, every time you hear a Democrat tell you about the existential threat Tom Tiffany, Donald Trump, and MAGA in general represent to the nation, always remember that we could just be waltzing into this primary, coalescing, and already talking about Tom Tiffany. No disrespect to Royce or Barnes, but like, no Democratic shitbaggery notwithstanding, Francesca Hong would run away with this primary if the Democrats would just let the voters pick. And they would rather try and obfuscate and make it a race the entire time, all the way up until the finish line. I have vamped long enough. We have our next guest waiting in the wings, fresh off his carpool. I'm bringing you up here, Chris. How are you today, man? How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Just did my dropping off kids and picking up staff and carpooling over here to the Capitol. Doing all right. And then, of course, I don't know if anyone's dropped out or entered the race for governor in that time, but please let me know.
Yeah, it's the same since the last time we spoke at the very least. And I made this disclaimer earlier in the show, but in case anyone listening wasn't here for that, Chris and I were used to do a podcast weekly together. So there is, and Chris Alfheim and I also had a relationship. So it's not like I'm all upfront about this stuff here as we jump into this. But I brought you on here because I knew you were going to have some certain opinions here. So let's just start with your basic reaction to Friday. I said I was so thankful that it was after my show. I had 48 hours to kind of like decompress and approach this in a much more calculated way than I think I would have if the news broke while I were doing the show. And so your initial thoughts on where we stand today in the race.
Yeah, I mean, it was really surprising. Frankly, I think that there was things were shaping up. It was looking like it was going to be a sprint. You know, Sarah Rodriguez had dropped at that point in the morning, and I think that really opened it up. It could have been anybody's race at that point. It opened up the opportunity for Kelda to be able to kind of replace Sarah as being somebody who's inside the building currently and knows what's going on here. Somebody who has like pretty decent fundraising. And I think that kind of got squashed as soon as the rumors came out. It seemed fake at first because it just seemed so far-fetched with somebody saying, oh yeah, David Crowley's getting back in the race. And it's like, well, I don't think he ever got above 5%, right? Like that doesn't make any sense at all. Like there was a reason he got out. The last thing that he did was to endorse Sarah Rodriguez, who like basically did not have the financial sheets balanced correctly. So that was the last thing that he had done. And frankly, in that week in between, it turned out that a quarter of all transit routes in Milwaukee County, the area that's in his jurisdiction, were going to have to be cut, contrary to what he had said in terms of his own budget. There's also a big fight breaking out about a building they want to build next to the courthouse in Milwaukee that's going to cost the price tag had doubled, and it looks like it's almost doubled again. It's going to be over $1 billion all said and done. The same price as if instead they would fund every single parks project that they know about in our county, which has, you know, tons of deferred maintenance. And so for him to get back in would have been surprising in and of itself. And then to say like, oh yeah, Tony Evers is coming out of the sidelines here and is looking to try and throw his weight behind somebody who had dropped out. It seemed unbelievable. Frankly, even now on Monday, it still seems unbelievable that it seems to be the strategy of the establishment to say, yep, this is the safest route to go, according to them. And it seems like it's thrown the entire race into chaos at this point.
Do you hear any I realize there hasn't been a lot of time with you on the Hill, like since that announcement here, but maybe even before this decision ended up coming down surrounding where the consternation, like you're really watching a groundswell around a candidate. And I don't need to tell you, I know you're politically engaged. We're watching it happen in Michigan. Michigan's not a far cry away from Wisconsin. We watched it in Maine, scandals notwithstanding. You're kind of watching the bubbling up surrounding progressive excitement here. And I genuinely, naive little old me, I was like, Wisconsin feels like they know better. It's a very politically engaged state, and like you're kind of reading the tea leaves and they'll just back off. And it kind of feels like, where does the consternation come from with this candidate? I guess that it seems like there's a vested interest in trying to find anybody else other than the person who's been pulling ahead most of the race.
I mean, I think if you take a few steps back, there's so much money in politics right now, Ben, it is bonkers, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it has really changed the shape of it. So it's not so much the individual candidates as it's just the environment that we are in. Everybody sees it at the federal level. It has creeped into the state level. Local level, you can still win just knocking on doors straight up without having to raise too much. But at the state level, that is shifting. Like every once in a while, a candidate will get through just on straight grassroots. But there's tons of money. And there's only so much money that activists are giving, people that really care about, making sure that there's good governance because of the lack of dedication to civics in America. There's less people who are super engaged in this stuff. Frankly, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when things aren't done, things aren't accomplished, that your idea of things not being able to get done just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Your skepticism and cynicism becomes self-perpetuating. So the people who throw money in have realized that they can get a return for their investment. And so now you have more and more people who are like, okay, this is an investment. I can put money into the political process, get the politicians I want. And it's gotten to the point where they don't even need to pass legislation. It's just keep the broken status quo. Don't get involved in markets. Don't get involved in businesses when they're doing horrible things. Don't get involved when the rich are stepping out of bounds. And then they can continue to do what they want, which is accumulate more wealth, screw over the working man and woman across the country. So where the consternation comes, I think it comes from the fact that the only thing that would change that is if there's an engaged public, and if the public actually realizes the power that they have if they lock arms and demand things that are better. That's frankly the only way that we have gotten the gains that we have. That's why we have a 40-hour work week. That's why we have a minimum wage. That's why we have Social Security. It's why we have Medicare, why we have Medicaid, why civil rights passed. All of the major victories, why women were able to gain suffrage 100 years ago, is because there was an organized effort to say from the people, and they were able to push back against the money. Now the money is coming in here and saying, well, wait a second, if you have a populist candidate winning in a state that shuts things down, right, then that means that the money could get pushed out. Money doesn't get to run these things anymore. The dark curtains are pulled up and people can see the sunshine comes into what's actually going on in politics. If people are actually in control of it, it's not good for profits. That's not good for the people who are throwing money into campaigns expecting a return on investment, right? Who is that right now? Who's spending more money than anybody right now in our country, Ben? Sorry to put you on the spot. You're the one supposed to be asking the questions, but who is trying to build stuff around our state against the opposition of people left, right, and center?
That would be data centers.
Data centers. That's exactly right. So they see the huge opportunity. If anybody comes in there to put a damper on their ability to build data centers, that's bad for profits. So I think that is probably the biggest piece of why you're seeing things shift around right now.
So Brian is a regular listener out in Fremont who says, wow, and this guy's into politics. I love Chris Larson. So that sums it up right there. He voted third party. Oh my God.
Okay.
He voted third party during the presidential election in 2024, and ultimately votes for who he thinks is the best candidate. Do you think the people of Wisconsin will end up seeing through these efforts here? I asked the question, I kind of posed it to the audience. Chuck Schumer endorsed Janet Mills, and Graham Plattner won 72-28 in that primary. I'm not comparing Evers to Schumer. I think Evers is a more likable person in the state of Wisconsin than Schumer is around the country. That being said, does an establishment endorsement for a candidate who, no disrespect to Crowley, really never was polling above 2 or 3% the entire time, is that going to make noise in the lead up? I'm asking you to prognosticate here a little bit. Or do you think we kind of see the polling kind of trend along the path it's been on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could go a number of different ways. What I have seen and heard from the people who have been engaged and paying attention so far is they're pretty pissed because Tony Evers just upended this entire thing. And this wasn't just Evers casting doubt on his ability, on Fran, is casting doubt on Kelda, it was casting doubt on Mandela, and it's casting doubt on Joe Brennan. And all of them have to be looking at each other like, what the heck is he doing coming into this race thinking he knows better? So I think there's definitely, and each of them have kind of been running anti-establishment campaigns. I mean, even Joel Brennan, I think he was the second candidate to come out in favor of a data center moratorium and saying that there needs to be strict regulations on these things. And I was like, that's interesting. This guy can read a poll, Kelda and Mandela have been pretty severe against data centers. And then of course, Fran is the only one that's come out for a full moratorium. David Crowley has not. right? And so that's the thing where I think there's a key difference. So they could definitely align and say, yeah, we don't want this. And if it just pisses people off that the establishment's trying to come in, it does seem a lot like this is 2016, right? Where there's huge efforts to shoulder Bernie to the side. And so I think this could absolutely backfire. And especially if there's attention nationally that there's a push to try and get the establishment to maintain, that could absolutely backfire. Tony's popular because he beat Scott Walker. I don't think a lot of people have looked exactly at the record of what he did not fight for, right? Because it's like,
Sure.
oh, we have this, it's better than Scott Walker. But he gave in to Republicans on issue after issue, budget after budget. He is the reason why we have referendums every single cycle, 220 in the last big one, of schools trying to make up funds because the state keeps cutting them. His last big decision was to spend down all of our money, to spend Wisconsin into a deficit, frankly, precisely at the time where Donald Trump is using federal dollars as a excuse to hurt states and control them and push for his racist and corrupt policies. And so the more money we have on the side, the better Wisconsin is to push against that. I've talked to him directly about it. Tony does not understand that. He does not understand that Donald Trump and Republicans right now are not the same Republican Party as 20 years ago, that they are going in for the final push to get rid of our democracy. I think there's still this idea that this is just a normal election. And that's one of the big reasons why Tony was encouraged not to run a year ago.
Better than Scott Walker sounds like it would be the Democratic slogan in 2026.
That was it. There's the saying around here, I don't know how much it gets out, but it's like the best thing about Tony Evers is that he's not Scott Walker. The worst thing about Tony Evers is that he's Tony Evers.
Okay, I hadn't heard that. That's interesting, though. Wisco Girl says you get it. I tend to agree with that sentiment there. And just to be clear, because I kind of highlight this, and I put it in the text that I sent you as well. I know right-wingers are going to try and run this story up the flagpole in an effort to further this divide in ways that are impure. Whereas I've always been like kind of a vocal person pushing against centrists. Have a place, but they have to acknowledge when they might not be as popular. No matter who comes out of this race has your vote. Yes?
For this, yeah, absolutely. We have to beat Tom Tiffany. I think that's important for everybody to recognize and remember that Tom Tiffany is he's god awful. Like, this is a guy who he knows, like typical Republicans, he knows exactly what to say, what polls well. Mm-hmm. It's just if anybody looks, looks past that they recognize that he doesn't believe in any of this, right? It's the kryptonite of Tom Tiffany is the follow-up question, right? Is he's like, oh yeah, I'm against the Iran war. How come you didn't vote to end it? How come you just voted to give a ton more money to the Department of Defense, right? And he's just like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to push against data centers. And it was like, no, there's legislation nationally to try to do that. You did not step in the way, right? So he knows exactly what he should be saying, but his record is there, and he would be absolutely awful. He would be worse than Scott Walker, if folks can believe that, because he would just follow what Donald Trump wants. So he would be like Scott Walker to the Donald Trump power, if you're looking for a math equation.
There we go.
And that would just not be tenable for the state of Wisconsin moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's the general consensus there, and I always want to be clear to get that out there, because you can see, and you know the media groups I'm talking about that are trying to run this up the flagpole here. We're speaking with State Senator Chris Larson out in Milwaukee here. Thanks for jumping on. This is the first time you're on Outside the Box Unfiltered.
We can curse.
No. What's that? Yeah, fuck. We can say whatever we want.
No, I can't. We have a swear jar, so I'd lose my money. But
I love that.
I won't do my first time, but if you have me back.
Yeah, oh yeah, you'll definitely be welcome back here. Tell all the people in Milwaukee, look for the Ben Cominos YouTube page. I need 30 more subs to pass up my old station, so I'm kind of on a mission right now.
Nice.
So,
30? All right.
Yeah, 30 more. Thanks a lot, man. Hey, I appreciate you coming on short notice. We'll do this again real soon, all right?
Yeah. Appreciate you.
Yep.
Thanks,
Take
man.
it easy.
You're good.
Yep. Bye. Yeah, like I said, one of the first guests I had surrounding bail reform the first time I had him on. Obviously, much more in line. It's funny, the comments much quieter during Chris's comments than male Chris's comments than female Chris's comments. But I have a feeling most people listening to this show are probably more in line with the way that Chris Larson was talking there. Tom Tiffany win is a guaranteed tax cut. Well, not if the Senate goes Democrat. What that means is, realistically, Brian, I think the inevitable outcome of this race is the Republicans hold the assembly, the Democrats hold the Senate, and then fundamentally the governor's race is going to be irrelevant, and then it's going to be 2 more years until we can see if a Democratic trifecta takes hold or not. Like, I have the worst kind of feeling that's what we're headed towards, and only time will tell. Wisco Girl says, thanks for finding and providing a platform for sensible legislators. Appreciated both guests today. Great. I appreciate that, Wisco Girl. It's what I'm trying to do. And that's what's funny is I feel more free to do it. That would have been something I would have wanted to do back when I was working at a shitty little radio station, but then inevitably there would have been people like, I thought you were a centrist. Why are all the Democrats? Blah, blah, blah. Now I'm doing a show that actually is like for people that understand politics and have political acumen, and it's very nice. What time is the guest tomorrow? Yeah, let me check my non-calendar here, old lib. 9:40. 9:40 tomorrow, we'll be speaking with Jillian Bettino, who is running for a district that I don't have written down, but I will know that info when we do the show tomorrow. I appreciate you guys listening to the show today. A little bit more focused just on one solid issue for 2 straight hours, which is not normally the way that I do things, but I figured given the news of the day, this would be the most effective way to do things. And by the way, Erin the intern is going to be on Ben After Dark tonight, and we're going to get her take on matters as well. She's living in Milwaukee, things she's hearing and seeing, things of that nature. So we will be continuing this conversation later tonight. 29th Senate District. Thank you very much, old lib. But so that's going to be happening, and Unwound and Bound, aka Justin, is going to be swinging by in the afternoon to hopefully help me put the finishing touches on my software setup to be able to stream everything through one means, which that might be a little bit of a new look tomorrow. We're going to see what we can ultimately figure out today, and that should be pretty exciting. We're going to be test running it during Ben After Dark tonight, so if you want to see a shit show and me looking panicked and doing this face like a lot, tune into Ben After Dark tonight. It's a lot more fun, and I'm okay if we have technical difficulties in the night one. This is still professional, Ben. That's why I'm in my Dare shirt. Say no to drugs. Yeah, there he is. He gets it. I was supposed to send you a list of things we're going to work on. That's my bad. I'm realizing I forgot to do that. But we'll touch base after I get off the air. But so that's all that's coming up. As I said, we have a 29th District Senate candidate tomorrow, plus all the news of the day that I didn't get a chance to jump into today, as well as from over the weekend. So looking forward to talk to you guys. No better promo than want to see a shit show, tune in tonight. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I'm upfront with you guys. I feel like that's what you like about the show is that I don't false promise, you know? There's a chance we're not even up, and this time it'll be Justin's fault, not mine. I'm joking, but I keep putting the pressure on him just because I know it drives him nuts. So I think we're going to call it a day. Thanks for listening, guys. Really glad I got to talk to you guys about this and not planes. This show would have sucked a lot more if I had to talk about planes. Do we have a longer show today? No, that's after I get actual ads done. I have one sponsor. I don't know if I announced that, but we officially are sponsored starting September 1. But I need like 6 more companies. And I'm going to keep making this plea. Anybody who knows any smaller companies that are looking for a cheap advertising opportunity with a decent size for a show with a decent size following, email me, Ben Cominos at gmail.com. I'm working on a professional email, but that's kind of what I have thrown together as a repository for anybody who wants to email me shit. If anyone runs a company or knows of a company that will be looking for advertising at like 25% of the price of radio or TV, give them my name and we'll make it happen. Blaine says he can't turn down the opportunity to watch a shit show. I'm saying, or it might be the best thing to talk since sliced bread. Under promise, over deliver. Exactly. Ben After Dark featuring Ben on Jazz Cabbage talking about airplanes. Look, Ben on Jazz Cabbage on Ben After Dark cannot become a recurring thing. I was having anxiety attacks on Thursday when I was doing that. I kept losing my train of thought. I went back and watched that episode. Fucking ridiculous. That's what you people wanted. But I did it. Yeah, looking forward to it, old lib. I always appreciate you listening. I heard the missus is tired of hearing my voice. Please tell her I said hello. And I appreciate the support from each and every one of you guys. Oh, and I'll do this more formally tomorrow, but Lori was another big time donator on my Venmo or supporter on my Venmo. I absolutely love you guys for doing stuff like that. I appreciate you, Lori, very much, and everybody who has been contributing through my Venmo. If you're looking for a way to assist as I'm in the interim here, it's in my link tree. You can see it in my bio on the Book of Faces as well as on the Tube of You. Just click it, and the first button there is like donate on Venmo. So if you guys are in a position to do so, that would sure put my mind at ease as we are in the interim here. Hallie says Thursday was the best Ben After Dark. Okay, we'll see what happens. All right, I'm going to call it a day. Have a lovely rest of your day. I will talk to some of you tonight and the rest of you tomorrow morning. You take it easy.